Okay, guys, we are back. The New Jersey High School Strength Coaches Podcast. I'm with my buddy Paul Collodi. We're doing part two of this podcast about our life and times before and after high school strength and conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
We would have been able to go, but my son had, in air quotes, my stomach hurt. He seemed, quite fine on the way home.
You should have said, "Hey, you want to stop for some Zeppelis?" If he would have
Yeah.
said yes, oh man,
Yeah, I don't know if the boardwalk is open during the winter. There's only like, Jenkinson's is open, but certain things are not open during the winter time. Yeah, I think we recorded like our earlier episode when I took him to the batting cages on the
yeah,
boardwalk, and it was like every time he'd get through, I don't know if you get like 50 balls thrown at you, pitch to you on the machine, then it's like, let's go get ice cream, then go back and play. Let's go get this. Man, we must have put on a good 3 pounds within that hour.
energy, babe, energy.
When you're a kid, it's so good to be able to eat, just to be able to eat like that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So, Paul, so we're talking about our life and times. We're really, happy as high school strength coaches. The guys that had posted stuff on Twitter, Alan Bishop, I thought it was so funny how he's like, the college coaches are complaining. And look, rightfully so. I've complained about the crappy pay. It's more like heartbreaking pay, because they're building multi-million dollar facilities. You've got a master's degree and they pay you average at best. The way to get paid a lot really is you've got to be the director, which there's only so many of those positions, or you've got
yeah,
to be with football. And football hours are crazy. It's not conducive to a relationship, a family, or any of that. And that's heartbreaking of how you're in early, you're home late, you miss a lot of stuff. And I mentioned I spoke with Mike Schrock earlier
hmm
this morning, and he was at the college level for 5 years. I think before that he was high school. Then he went to college in Florida, strength and conditioning. But he was telling me about his retirement at the end of June and how it's time. And he's like, I've got grandkids and I want to see them doing their thing. And he goes, Zach, I missed a lot of my own kids'
hmm
games because I was so worried I can't miss this lift with the football team or this and that. But at the high school level, I think at least I've learned like, you know, if I'm out, if I'm sick, it's going to be all right. But when I
yeah,
was at the college level, if I was not feeling good, you felt bad. Like you're like, oh my God, they're missing a workout. But you know what the kids are probably thinking? Thank God. Give me a break from Evanesh. That dude's nuts. They needed it. They needed the rest. And so
hmm
let's, get back. So we were talking about you're getting into 100 and Central. You had done all this traveling with the minor league baseball team. And what was the lifestyle change? Did you have kids during, this time? There's a lot
I,
going on there.
I had kids with the Patriots, and I think we talked about this before. When I'm leaving for another 9 days, and your daughter says, "Dad, how come you're leaving again?"
Oh,
That hits you pretty good, and
that would have
that's when
killed me.
yeah, that's when you start to think about it. I know Jason Spray was talking. You work all day and all of these hours to get your teams really, really good, but that's a double-edged sword because good teams play deep into the playoffs, so that extends the amount of time, and then it's going to be recruiting and getting guys ready, and it's a never-ending cycle. But at the high school, stepping away from the Patriots, first of all, when the Patriots season was over in October, those guys went away. Those guys were gone. That was all on the phone correspondence. Um, we had a facility right in the ballpark, so we did some off-season training with high school kids. And back then, no high schools had strength coaches. I think Bridgewater did, which was by me. Hillsborough did, but none of the other schools had strength coaches. And truthfully, as a professional courtesy, I knew if a school had a strength coach, and if one of those kids came to my facility, I'd say, why aren't you going to your strength coach? Where's the disconnect there? And
Right.
then if they'd say, well, it's not good with my timing, then that's when we would, like we were talking about before, let's find out what you're doing there. And then we're going to supplement what you're doing there to get you better, whether it's mobility, whether it's single leg work. So if you're we're going to do, we're probably going to do step ups. We're going to do lateral lunges. We're going to do reverse lunges, things
Yeah.
like that.
Complementary work.
Yeah.
I remember in the early 2000s, I remember Dave Tate giving me that advice, because there was a lot, it was the beginning of kind of private sector stuff taking off. And Dave was like, if I had a private facility and I was training a football player, I would email the coach, reach out to the coach and say, hey, I'm training one of your players, Paul Collodi.
Hmm.
Uh, Let me know what you need me to work with him, work on with him, so I could send him back to you better and make your job easier. And I
Hmm.
mentioned that when we interviewed Rich Carroll, my director of athletics, is we're trying to remove headaches from the people that we're supporting. I don't want to
Yeah.
give a headache to my administration, to, whether it's school principal, whether it's central office, whether it's my athletic director, and kids coming to me for high school sports, middle school sports, but especially high school. I want the coach to just be like, man, look at Paul. He's in shape. He could bang
Mhm.
out push ups and pull ups till the cows come home. We're trying to make their life easier. And I think that's where some independent private sector coaches struggle, is they want to be all or nothing. You gotta learn to be flexible.
Yeah. And
So
that's what we did in the off season. We worked with a lot of the schools that didn't have strength coaches, and um, it when the position came up 100 in Central, my kids were getting a little older. They were still in elementary and in kindergarten, but I knew eventually if I stayed there that I'd get to see my kids, and I did. I mean, I watched my daughter for 4 years, play soccer and basketball, and
yeah.
they won a sectional championship with a lot of her friends who came through the weight room on the basketball side. Um, and now on Friday nights, I get to watch my son. He's kicking, he's playing, and it's good. And getting to watch him start to enjoy the weight room,
Yes.
and come home and say, "Did you see what I did today with the dumbbells?" I'm like, yeah, that's awesome.
That's great, dude. Having your son, seeing your daughter. I have been, what I did with my private facility in my hometown was I used to do a 7 p.m. group up in my first location.
Mhm.
And being in that central slash North Jersey area, people work a little bit later, they're commuting to the city. But
Mhm.
down here, it wasn't like that. So I said, I'm not running a group past 6. Friday, I'm going 4 and 5 p.m. And if my son has a game, sometimes I'll cancel the last group and I will tell the parents through an email, my son's got a game. My
Yeah.
daughter with tennis is a Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday gig. And so it's been easy to catch all of her stuff. But I love that freedom of being able to be with my kids and
Mhm.
record the first touchdown, the first home run. I mean, I've got all that stuff. And so if you were still with the Patriots, your weekends would have been I mean, 9 days away
Nope.
from your daughter, dude, that's a knife in the heart.
Yeah.
That's somebody
That's what it was.
posted
It was.
in our group, Paul. I think it was in our Facebook group, had like his wedding ring on and then like the championship rings.
Mhm.
And it said, while you're busy chasing these rings, don't forget about the most important ring.
Yeah.
And when I ask strength coaches at the college level a lot of this stuff, they say the struggle is they're so hyped up with the kids during the day, then they get in the car, they're getting home, they have to like learn to shut it down and
Mhm.
shut it off. You can't come in and start coaching your wife and your kids. They are not your athletes. And the college sector has a lot of pressure on you. As
Yeah.
you're in the minors. There's pressure on us as high school coaches, but it's different. I
Mhm.
don't know how to explain it. It's like the world's not going to end if somebody's sick and a training session has to get missed, right?
No, absolutely not. And that's yeah, the hardest group to convince on that sometimes is the parents. The parents are like, "How
Yes.
comes the weight room?" Well, weight room's closed today. It's closed. We're having an ice storm
Nice.
potentially, and it's believe me, I want to be in there. I want to be in there working with the guys and girls. That's what I love to do. But you know what? We're going to get at it tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to do some stuff today. Go outside and tubing, find a place to go, and be a kid for one more day, and we'll get back at it tomorrow.
I agree. And I have kind of the philosophy for my private facility, if the schools are closing or closed, then I'm going to do the same. I don't care if the weather's going to be better in the afternoon, the streets are cleared. What I don't want happening at home is a kid pushing the mom or dad to drive, then an accident happens, or it looks good, but your area of town is streets are frozen. And so yeah, it's great. So you've been at Hunter Central 10 years, 2011, and we're
I started my 10th year.
and you were an athletic trainer, and so it was a new position. Was
Mhm.
that bubble created before you got there?
No, that was hard work. It was walking into a facility, and the guy that was there before me did a great job, with the room that was there, and it was time for him to move on. And um, the way I trained, and was not hammer strength. Nothing against the hammer strength machines, but we had one of everything. And when we have a
Wow.
school of 3,000 kids, one of everything doesn't is not conducive for flow and churn. So, I
Yes.
made sure that I within reason moved some of the equipment a little closer together so it wasn't as spread out. And we used open space. We got more dumbbells. We got some kettlebells. Um, I have two racks only, so we used the racks the best we could. I had two benches, and we did split routines. So I'd have one group doing squat and maybe pull up day, the other group doing a bench and an RDL day. And
Yeah.
then on Wednesday when we came back, or Tuesday when we came back, we flipped.
Flip
Um,
flopped.
yeah,
Yes.
and we were doing plate pushes in the hallways on carpet remnants. We have a carpet place in town.
Yeah.
I went, they donated a crap load of carpet remnants to me, put the plate on the carpet, push it down the hall and back, dragging it backwards with the carpet remnant, doing our body saws in the hallway on the marble, outside doing our hurdle work. We had a big wall, throwing med balls against the wall. You know, our superintendent came down one day and said, "Looks like you need more space." I said, "Boy, that would be great." And the next thing I knew, it was a 3-year process, but we got it done.
Oh, it was 3 years. I did
Yeah.
not know that. So it was just constant fundraising from parents and activities, or
No, it was we had a capital surplus. So whatever money was left over, they just kept putting it into the capital surplus. And
nice.
um, I mean, the year that they did the weight room, they also completely redid the field house, new flooring, stuff like that, a new roof on one whole part of the building. They did a lot one year,
That
and
field house, I've been in that field house because of wrestling, which I was there, in the early 90s.
mhm,
And they had their own wrestling room. So that
yep,
field house is a permanent building, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's heavy duty stuff. And so in your bubble, is there running water and bathrooms and everything?
Well,
Okay. Same,
save
same
money.
with us.
That was it. So down the hall, there's a water fountain down the hall, but we encourage the kids to bring their own stuff. There's several bathrooms down the hallway, so if they have to
Yeah.
go, they go.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's that's part of it. But we have a great spot. We have a lot of open space. We do have racks. We have the turf, which is great for the sleds and the hard
Yeah.
work, and all our crawls and our rolls and all of those.
Yep.
We have some fun.
That is great. So let's, I hope people are kind of staying with us. If there's college coaches out there listening, the good news is that there's a lot of high schools starting to really seek out a qualified high school strength coach.
Yep.
And sometimes that qualified coach is somebody who's already running the weight room. You
Mhm.
might be a science teacher or another, classroom teacher, but this might be something a new position that opens up. You've been running the weight room as a volunteer or, for the stipend during each season. It might be an opportunity for you to move forward. That being said, Paul, do you know where we are, with the NHSSCA, with the high school strength coach certification? How?
Not exactly sure. I know that they were doing reviews on all the information that's going into the manual.
Right.
So there will be a manual that's going to go out. I know that they were earmarking that to be somewhere in the middle of 2021 to have that completely done.
Who's our guy?
Ready to go.
Who's our contact there? Coach Sco is the man, or Kevin Vanderbush?
I think it's for that. I want to say it's Coach Jacoby
Okay.
or Coach Vanderbush, one or the other. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And so I think that's going to be huge. There's really no, specific for high school strength and conditioning certification out there. We have a good amount of guys have the CSCS,
Hmm.
and then there's the CSCCA,
Yeah, that's
Certified
college.
Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. So very good. So what do we want to get into next? What questions do you have for me
I
with
want to
this
hear how what
transition?
I want to hear the evolution of Coach Evan Esch, where
Yeah.
how you started. I know you were a teacher, but at
Yes.
an Edison, correct?
Yep. Taught in Edison, started in 98. I graduated, like I had mentioned to you, from Kane at the New Year. So I was a
Mhm.
December 97 finished student teaching. And then January 98, I started substitute teaching in the Edison schools for phys ed. And, no strength and conditioning knowledge back then, doing my own bodybuilding thing. They used to call you every morning to be a substitute. They had me going to
Yeah,
all these different schools. And the I always say that the working as an elementary phys ed teacher gave me such an advantage with organization, creativity, kind of being an entertainer, learning to
yeah,
make kids laugh has been really important. Like I have a lot of fun at the high school level, even with bad jokes, they laugh. They need a lot of those bad jokes or some sarcasm. And so I started 98, and then they were in the talks, I think around 2000, to bring back middle school sports in Edison, or maybe in New Jersey as a whole. Um, I hadn't seen middle school sports when I was a kid. I would see all the banners at my middle school in the
mhm.
80s. And so they bring back middle school sports. I take on the middle school wrestling, and I just go, full into it. I'm studying more wrestling. I'm buying Dan Gable VHS tapes. I'm running practices. I would go to the high school to work with Coach Nisavaccia, and he would
Legend.
say, yeah, Coach Nis would say, show me how you teach a cradle. I show him, he's like, okay, tweak it like this. And so what I learned from him, I built, a feeder system. And when he would get freshmen, they could shoot singles and doubles and do a stand and switch, and they could sprawl and snap and spin and do a front headlock. They knew how to hand fight. We did a lot of calisthenics with
Mhm.
my, background. I was doing squat jumps and partner hand walks and push-ups. And so I would train the kids with all these body weight exercises. And so I coached at the middle school level. And then it was around, I tore my ACL, I think, in 2002. And that's when I became obsessed with strength and conditioning. I wanted to learn how the best wrestlers in the world trained, which at the
Mhm.
time was the Russians. And so I researched it, and I kept coming across Elite FTS by searching Russian training, and I came across Louis Simmons, and I really went down the rabbit hole. I would call Louis Simmons once a week on my prep from school,
Mhm.
and we would talk about wrestlers he was training, you know, throwing medicine balls for 5 minutes nonstop, dragging a sled for a mile, and just he opened up my mind to a different style of training that I wasn't at all used to. And I experimented on myself to recover from my ACL surgery. I think I was 27 at the time, and started training kids out of my parents' garage, backyard, local playgrounds. And first house we bought was 2003. First thing we fixed was the two-car garage. So in 2003 started the garage stuff. 2007 got my warehouse. And then because I put so much content out on the internet,
Mhm.
in 2011, I think, um, I reached out to Coach Goodale over at Rutgers and said, if you need any help with strength for your wrestlers, I'll volunteer. And I think Coach Goody was doing like 6 a.m. workouts. So who knows what time he was waking up at from Tom's River to zip over to New Brunswick. And I don't know, what he was doing, but one of our first kids from the garage went to Rutgers and wrestled there for a year, and basically they were getting killed like with these workouts, and they were getting kind of the wrestling team would kind of get like a leftover person, like anything,
Mhm.
anyone like, a guy that was waiting to get drafted in the NFL would become, a strength coach for wrestling. And so their workout would be like 6x6 squat, 6x6 RDL, 6x6 bent over row. And one of the kids, Scotty Winston,
Mhm.
who I worked with in elementary school, third through fifth grade, then middle school. He went to Jackson, but I remember him saying, he's like, Coach, he'd say, Mr. Evanesh. If I see him now, he still says Mr. Evanesh. I go, Scotty, stop, dude. He's like, I know, it's just habit. I had him since he was a 8-year-old. And
Respect.
anyway, yeah, he was such a great kid. And so Scotty said to me, I feel so slow and heavy and my back's always tight. And he was coming. So that's when I reached out to Coach Goody. And so I had a Division I team traveling to the Edison location, which was right on the border of Highland Park. So it could be like just shy of 10-minute drive for those kids.
Mhm.
And then in 2014, 2015, I was at Lehigh. Now, here's what's interesting about how things happened at Lehigh and just volunteering and helping. You become aware of certain coaches when you're following a sport, whether it's football, baseball. And when you love the sport, you just want to connect with those coaches, right? So
Yeah.
it must have been 2008, maybe 2009. I used to sell my books as physical books, not all these PDFs like we do today. And I
Mhm.
had a monster kind of package of like 4 books, 10 audio CDs, a DVD, and I knew of Blair Academy. I knew of Coach Buxton. So I would go on, any wrestling coach, club owner, I would just email them and offer my help, volunteer. I emailed Coach Buxton. We exchanged an email. I told him I'd like to send him some stuff. He could use it with his guys. I send him, it's like a big box, 4 manuals with my phone number. He emails me back after he gets the stuff. He's like, call me anytime. I call him. He's on vacation in Rhode Island on the beach. And long story short, when he gets back to school, he invites me to Blair on day
Nice.
one, on move in day. I'm seeing all the kids moving in. He introduces me to the athletic director. He gives me a tour. Then I train the whole team on that day. He didn't tell me a time limit. I'm not realizing this is first day of school. They've got things to do. I must have trained them for 2 hours. He had so many kettlebells. We had kettlebells for every kid in that room. And I would go and work with his team in the early fall, then right before the season, then in the middle. So kind of like 4 times a year, I'd go up. Then he goes to Lehigh and he's running their athletic club. They're basically their, guys training for the Olympics. And so that was a pretty kind of new thing back then. There was some regional training centers, but it wasn't happening to the extent it was now. That's 11, 12 years ago. He calls me or texts me one day to see if I want to come up and train those guys for one day. And I was absolutely. I'll love to take a road trip and train wrestlers. Like, yeah, man, perfect. So he said, "Great, come on up on this day, this time." I go up on a weekday and I train the varsity starters and the guys prepping for Olympic trials and
Wow.
international competition. And I'm in their old wrestling room, which I think was close to 100 years old. I don't know how old it is. Beautiful cathedral ceilings, exposed wooden beams, black and white photos around the whole
Wow.
wrestling room. I was in there. I got to tell you, Paul, I was in there. The guys were sitting on like little bleachers, lacing up their shoes, and I like get on the wrestling mat and then I look at the photos and then I just close my eyes. I know this sounds strange, but this is how I get with this stuff. I close my eyes and I could like hear the sounds of those guys wrestling. I hear their feet moving. I hear the coach blowing the whistle. It was such history. I could like feel it spilling out of the walls, out of the photos. And so I speak to Coach Santoro, Pat Santoro, and He's like, "Yeah, the place is yours. Do whatever you want." And I tell him, "All right, I'm gonna, warm them up on the wrestling mat, take them through this, warm up I do and some jump training." And he goes, "Let me show you the weight room." He's like, "It's a real dungeon, though. I'm just warning you." And I'm thinking to myself, sounds perfect to me. We
Mhm.
kind of go down these little stairwell. It's like 750 square feet, small, low ceilings, maybe 7.5 feet high. There was three squat racks, like boom, 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 dumbbells, very heavy, and like thick dumbbells with knurling. They looked like special made Ivanko dumbbells, up to like 180 pounds, 200 pounds.
Mm.
There was a stereo system on a table, and we were like killing the weight room so bad that like every few minutes I'd have to push the speakers over because they were dropping the weights. So I think I just blew them away. And I just thought I was going up to train. Coach invites me up. I'd been doing that with him for a few years at Blair. Now he's inviting me up to do it at Lehigh. And so a little bit before that, Pat Santoro had actually visited the underground in Edison to see what we do. He was taking notes. It's a private school. I don't think they had a strength coach. I think uh, one of the assistant coaches was probably running it, which was pretty normal in the wrestling scene. And he takes me on a tour of the university. We look around. He's just talking about the history. He's talking about like, we can't wait to have another national champion. Like, we need to do this now. We can't be doing it in 2 years, 4 years. And I don't know if he was getting pressure from administration, but like, hey, you got to win. And Greg Strobel was, I think, the athletic director there who
Yeah.
recently passed away. He's a legend. And so that place has tradition for winning and excellence in everything, their academics, their athletics, social life. That's where it kind of like resonated and hit me about excellence and everything. So he gives me this tour. I trained everybody. We just destroy the weight room. I mean, like, it was amazing. It was old. It had the original Yesie's glute ham developer.
Nice.
Dude, we killed that weight room. Everything was awesome. And so he takes me walk, and I was like, well, I got to hit the road. I got like a 2 hour drive back home. Let me know anything you need. I'd love to help. He's like, all right, we need you.
Awesome.
And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm not even realizing that this was a job interview, essentially. And so I'm like, honestly, coach, I don't really know what to say. This was about 2 hour drive. Um, I was coaching a lot, and I was willing to move my family if there was a good situation. I
Mhm.
looked at everything like, if it's good for my family, we would make a move. And so nothing happened that year. It was already the beginning of wrestling season. And the next year, in the early fall, mid to early September, I'm driving home from Vermont up at Joe DeSena's place. And Pat gives me a call and says, Zach, we've got, a donation from somebody, and we could pay you. This is all we got. And you could come up twice a week. And it was like, it was going to start in October immediately, basically, and it was going to go till early August. Well, I don't know if I want to mention the money, but it wasn't a lot of money. I was like, that's going to probably cover my gas and a little bit of food money. He's like, that's what we got. So they paid me half right away. And then when the second semester started, they paid me the next half. I'd go up twice a week. I would train three groups. In hindsight, I probably just could have trained two groups, but it was a 7:30, 8:30, and 9:30. And I would leave the house at 5:30. So I would fly way up north and North Jersey and have to beat that 287 traffic. And I loved it. And then train them for 3 hours. Then I would drive to my gym. It was about an hour and 15 minutes from there. And then I would train groups from 3 to 8. So I'd have 8 hours of coaching and 4 hours of driving. That was rough. And once the nationals were over, I trained the guys. They had to do final exams. Then I trained them for like 2 weeks. And then just the kids left campus, left everything. And so even though I was supposed to be there till early August, They just stopped scheduling my training no matter how much I reached out to them. It was kind of like over. And so nothing happened after that because I don't even know if they have like a director of strength and conditioning. Every strength coach at Lehigh at the time was an outside contractor. So there was no, salary benefits. There was none of that stuff that family men are looking for.
Yep.
Um, then, so, I'm still in touch with those guys, love those guys. I'm still in touch with some of those wrestlers.
Mhm.
Great, just that place had a special place in my heart. Being able to walk through those hallways of this new building that they built. They had like 8 donors put up a $25 million building. So after that first meeting, a year and a half later, they've got a new building.
Wow.
The history of that place, I could see how it, like, when you're a college strength coach, that stuff blow. It's like it, at least for me, maybe because I'm so into history and like I have all the old bodybuilding books. I would walk through those hallways and see all the black and white photos of every All-American and national champ, and you feel like you you take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
You don't want to let down the alumni. You don't want to let down the men who are no longer living, but they were part of the brick and mortar of that program. And so that program was very special to me. Fast forward to I was at Rutgers 2018, 2019, all the while running multiple private locations. Um, I am doing like a Facebook Live one evening, and it's near Christmas time. And Coach Goodale text messages me. I had trained his son a little bit. He had known about me from 2011, his team traveling to me. He's, follows the social media. He sends it, or he tries calling me, but I guess it doesn't go through. I'm on the Facebook. So I get a text that comes across, and it's like, strength coach leaving. We need you. Call me. This is
Wow.
like a couple days before Christmas. And so I call him back. He tells me that guy was getting another job, and they that guy was a full-time guy. He did wrestling and volleyball. That was what
Mhm.
was in that building at that time. I come in, I get introduced to the director of strength and conditioning. He tells me what he wants. So I realize, all right, I'm not just working for the wrestling team. I've got a boss with the director. When I was at Lehigh, I had the wrestling coaches. And every time I was done training, I'd go into the office and sit with Pat, talk about the guys. He'd tell me about the match. Why did this guy lose? This guy looked good. Maybe we work on this. I loved it. It was such a togetherness.
Mhm.
When I get to Rutgers, I've got a director. Then, of course, I've got all the wrestling coaches. Then you've got athletic director, assistant athlete. You've got like 8 to 10 bosses. Okay. Even as an outside contractor, the director says, listen, man, I'll be honest with you. I've never had an outside guy come in, and I want, he's like, this is going to be, I want to know what you did at Lehigh, how that worked. And we're going to probably try to do that with you. And from the first day, he goes, I want to go over my expectations of you and your exit strategy on day one. And I'm like, whoa, I just got here,
Yeah.
And if we're thinking of me already like having to leave in 3 months, I don't know if this is even a good idea. And he's like, well, this position, something like this has never been done here. We have full-time guys. So now I have to get another guy to work with volleyball. You're just with wrestling. So my initial schedule there was going to be 2 days a week, but that became 3 days a week through my own. I saw
Mhm.
2 days a week for the starters. And then through conversations, it's like, hey, let's get an extra day for the non-starters, the red shirt guys. So I started doing a third day. Then I would go to the matches, which wasn't a requirement of me, but I loved being there.
Yeah.
I get to see what does this training pay off, or where does it not pay off? What It's the ultimate assessment, right? In the weight
Mhm.
room, the guy who benches and squats the most isn't always the best football player, wrestler, softball player, you name it.
Right.
You in the college sector, I could see where you get sucked into stuff. In the rack, they call it the Rutgers Athletic Center, it would fill like 7,000 people. The energy is so electric that you get sucked into that. It's another thing of taking pride. It's amazing. But matches are on Friday nights, matches are on Sunday nights, or Sundays during the day. That's normally family time. So if you're a Division I coach, you're at practices, right? You're warming them up, cooling them down. You're working with somebody who's possibly injured. Then you're at games and competition. You might be required to travel, right? And so, also in wrestling, guess what else? My kids get a midwinter break in the middle of February. They just had a week off. Guess who can't go on that trip to Florida? This guy.
Yeah.
And, my kids at that time, 3 years ago, my son is 9, my daughter's 11. As you know, wow, what a time. Like,
Mhm.
why is dad not on this trip? Or I can't even go during Christmas break to Florida because wrestling Big Ten 2 days after Christmas, they're in the Midlands, which is a
Yeah.
massive tournament. And so all these times, and Jason was saying it too, it takes away from family stuff.
Mhm.
And so when I was there, the position, I loved it. I love working with the guys. I still love those guys. I'm still in touch with those guys. Donnie Pritzloff, I probably connected with him more than any other coach in my life. Maybe, parallel to one of my high school coaches, but I still talk with him all the time. So you have these special moments, but then you also start realizing, man, the special moments with my kids. And I was only there a
Right.
year and a half. I got there, actually, I was there for 2 seasons, but I was there a year and a half. And so when a full time position was offered to me, I looked at the schedule. The pay was essentially what I made in my late 20s, before
Mhm.
wife, before kids. And the schedule was also, the salary is 12 months, whereas as a teacher and a strength coach at a school, I have a 10-month salary. And so the
Mhm.
money wasn't there. And so what I said to myself was, and to the coaches was, my decisions can't just be what I love. I love wrestling. If I win the lottery, I'll go to a college or a high school and I'll train wrestlers. Okay. No pay. You could pay me a penny if that's what they need to do. But I said, I can't do what I love. I have to do what's best for my family. And what's best for my family is not to take a position with less pay, some pay I was making 18 years ago, and less time with them. Like Mike Strock said, time is the only thing we can never get back. I've
Yep.
heard businessmen say that. Like, you could go bankrupt, you could lose the money, you could always get it back, but time has to be your most valuable asset because you never get it back. And you know what? I'm at every son's baseball game with my wife. He sees us. Drive him there, drive him back. Um, During the summertime, I take him to the tournaments because I can. I
Mhm.
would not have been able to do that at the college sector. When you're the strength coach, it's like at the college level, if you're not busy, it's this thing where we want to just be busy. You're trying to, like, we take too much pride in being the hardest workers, being there first, leaving last.
Mhm.
And ultimately you hurt your family in that process. And so, if I always said, if I ever go back to college, it's got to be extreme life changing money, where it's so much money that my wife doesn't have to work. And
Yep.
you know what I mean? It has to be able to give a big positive back. And I said, the only time I'll probably apply for a college position is if Clemson starts a wrestling program again. Then I'll apply for that strength and conditioning position. But otherwise, being at the high school, what was so attractive was they said you're going to be on teacher schedule, different hours, but still you're doing the 7 hours.
Mhm.
Um, and when school's closed, you could come in, you're a coach. But if I don't come in, the world is not ending.
Yeah.
I am not reprimanded for that. So, like this summer, we always take a week in Lake George. Um, I'll be able to do that. And nobody, the kids won't get weaker, the
Mm.
world, everything's going to be okay. They'll get a break from crazy Evanesh, which they could use during winter break. If we go to Florida or wherever it is we go, I could do it. It's as simple as that. There's a lot more flexibility. I don't know if it's because we have less, maybe the athletics have less pressure on them from everything. There's not donors and this and that coming in.
Mhm.
At the college level, make no mistake about it, it's about winning.
Yeah.
Even though I would talk to those kids about life, about academics, about social life, about, relationships, ultimately it's about winning. They're not going to keep a guy who's helping them become the best citizen. They're keeping the guy who's winning.
Yeah.
And so you're on the chopping block. And the strange thing, here's the strangest thing to me in college strength and conditioning, Paul, that's pushed me away, is there's all these big facilities, multi-million dollar facilities, 20, 50, $100 million sport complexes. But then strength coaches with master's degrees are getting paid 50 grand,
Hmm.
60 grand. And to me, that's a red flag. That means they want to invest in things when you got to invest in people.
That's right.
Invest in people. And at the high school, I did not take the first offer. I'm not going to mention the money. And the one of the administrators saw me leaving. Was like, Zach, I didn't know that you were going for your interview. We love you, man. They're all hyped up. I was like, I don't think I could do it for that. Blah, blah, blah. I drive home. It takes me 30 minutes to get home. 5 minutes later, an administrator calls me and heard, Zach, we didn't know you were getting interviewed. We didn't know they were making you the offer. We understand you weren't happy with that offer. I spoke to somebody. We're going to boom, bump it to this. And I'm like, here we go. In 30 minutes, they made an effort to
Mhm.
say, you know what? This guy's worth more. We got to invest in this guy. To me, and I had a good vibe from the interview, you know, and now this gave me a better vibe. Does that mean it's perfect? No, nothing's perfect. Does that mean money is everything? Absolutely not. But let me tell you something, money is important because money buys you a lot of freedom to do things. It relieves a lot of stress. If you're getting paid below average and you live in a expensive area, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, cost of living here is very expensive,
Yep.
very expensive. And here's another story, Paul. I don't know if I shared it on our podcast, but years ago, I was down in Florida. We do this Florida trip 3 times a year. And I had seen a high school strength coach position in South Carolina in Spartanburg School District where Coach Schrock works. They
Mhm.
have multiple schools. I see the position. I call Mike. And this is interesting too. Like the high school coaches are so helpful to each other. I call Mike. Mike's like, let me make a phone call for you. He calls the football coach and finds out the information. They're hiring a full-time strength coach. Right now, it's the football coach. He calls me back. He's like, Zach, that's the blue collar side of town. This is what they're looking for. Boom, boom, boom. The football coach is awaiting your call. Here's his phone number. I call the football coach. Great guy. He's like, listen, all I do is go to church and we football. That's it. So it's like if I'm not in the weight room or on the football field or in church, we could get on the phone. And he was so excited to talk with me. He was so open-minded and just, that Southern hospitality. He's like, we need a guy like you here. The kids need a guy like you here. He's like, I tell those kids if they miss a lift during the week, they're not playing on Friday. And
Wow.
so I'm on the phone with him and he's like, Zach, I'm going to see because the pay was so much less down there because of cost of living. That's how the
Mhm.
salaries are. He's like, but Zach, you've been in strength and conditioning field at the time was like 17 years. He's like, I'm going to talk to administration to see if they can start you on the 17th step. So it's like this guy, the football guy's trying to make it happen. So we're in Florida before he calls. The secretary calls. They want to set up an interview. It's early in the week in Florida. I'm like, I don't want to try doing an interview while I'm in a hotel in Florida and my kids are around. They call again. So I say to my wife, I go, Danielle, let's do this on our last day. On our last day, let's drive up to South Carolina. Let's drive around the area. If we like it, then I take the interview. I go, I don't want to take an interview and waste people's time. Then when we're done, then we'll fly back up. So we do that. We drive around and I was like, I don't honestly, we drove around. I looked at some areas. Long story short, I was like, I didn't feel like maybe I didn't look at the right places, but long story short, my gut instinct was, I don't know if my kids are going to fit in this area. It just seemed like it was super rural. I don't know if they were going to be ready for that coming from like a beach town with all the activity. And so I call back the secretary. I apologize for the delay. And she responds, I wish you would have told us that because one of us could have gotten in the car and helped show you the area and help you find housing. I'm like,
Wow.
here's a high school secretary telling me she'll show me around and help me find a place to live. Where I never at the college sector, it's like, look, man, if you're not in, you're out. And
Yeah.
we don't peace out. But let's say I want if I, for example, let's say you got something going on, your son, I don't know, daughter's got something. Let's say they're not in sports, but they're doing dance.
Mhm.
You could go to your AD and say, my daughter's got this event. Um, is it all right if I do like shorter groups today and shut it down 2 hours or just shut it down in general to see my daughter? That athletic director will say, Paul, boom, lock it up and hit the road. Go see your kid.
Yeah.
You don't dare say that at college. They say, leave? You want to leave? You ain't leave. Like, and I used to speak with Jason Spray when he was in college, and you could just hear it in his voice, the stress. And I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who's been at all these high levels, and he goes, Zach, I love this job, but I hate this profession because of those things. It's just like if you're not, it's like a kill or be killed thing at the collegiate level. At the high school level, I just feel like we've got breathing room.
Yeah.
We get paid better. We have more time off. We have more flexibility. We have more autonomy. We have a lot of good, we just got a lot of good things, man. It's human. That's to me what I think it is.
Yeah.
Like, so what? It's the middle of summer. I'm taking a 1 week vacation with my family. This college football team, baseball, wrestling team, they're going to live without me for the week. No need
Yeah.
to get all flipped out over that.
And it's community. It's a community, and
Yeah.
um, it's a lot more unconditional than at the college level, where people, like you said, were in it for themselves. Like the coaches are helping each other out, and
The high school.
that's what I love about Hunterdon Central is it's a big school. I mean, we're one of the biggest schools in New Jersey, but we get a small town feel. We got our downtown, and you go to ShopRite and you see everybody, and that's a part of it for me. I mean, 22 years in Flemington, and I wouldn't trade it. It's been a good ride.
You're happy. There's nothing wrong with being happy and having less stress. We're
Mhm.
not bad people for not wanting all the stress. And look, I'll tell you this too. I like the pressure of, can this guy help them, create better athletes, wrestlers, whatever it is. I like that pressure because I know I'll get the job done. I
Yeah.
liked coming into the middle of a wrestling season where people were like, oh, what are you going to do? Just maintenance. And I told them on day one, throw that word out the window.
Yeah.
Um, the college strength and conditioning to me, it's just always been heartbreaking in one shape or form. Heartbreaking when I have to leave a school that I really would love to stay at.
Mhm.
Heartbreaking that you got a master's degree with 20 plus years experience and they offer you a salary you had 17 years ago. That's heartbreaking when you're like, man, that squat rack with all the weights on it, that's like what I cost to them.
Yeah.
That's to me heartbreaking. And sometimes I'll tell you, sometimes I just blame myself for that, Paul. I say, well, that's my fault for not being an administrator, because then I could go in and like, be proactive for another strength coach, and I can vouch for the value of a strength coach. Whereas I think, you know, they don't really, not all coaches know what the strength coach is bringing. Strength coaches are some of the most intelligent people with their craft. And so sometimes they look at it as like, listen, why can't we just get John Smith in here? It's going to be 20 grand less, 25 grand less. Let's just get him in there.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
me,
At the
yeah,
college level, they're recruiting the best at their position. Whereas when they come to us, they may not have been the best there. So
yeah,
we're getting year one kids, but they're 12-year wrestlers, but they've
that's
never been
right.
in the weight room.
That's right.
And we gotta that's a giant pot. We gotta figure out how to merge all that together. And it's definitely a hard thing. And it's the same thing in high school. It's this, it's just a different hat. You got your freshmen, sophomore, juniors in with your seniors, and you could have some sophomores who are more advanced than some of your upperclassmen.
Oh, yeah.
And and how you got a senior coming in on a rack next to a sophomore who may be outlifting them. How are you gonna get that senior to have energy, to have enthusiasm when he's seeing that? Sometimes that's a downer for that kid. Plus, they got a lot of other stuff going on.
It's a lot.
So
It's a lot. And look, I'm not saying don't go to college. I'm just giving both sides of
yeah,
my experiences with it. There's a lot of college strength coaches out there that are loving life. But if you're going to be part of the big schools, be ready for the pressure. Be ready
yeah,
for a lot more of a cutthroat type setup. The D3 guys that I speak with are putting in the hours. They tend to be a one-man show with maybe one assistant,
mhm,
and they tend to do a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. schedule, right? And then maybe a little bit on Saturday. That I don't care if you're a strength coach, you're a carpenter, you name it, 12-hour shifts will crush you.
yeah,
Cops do 12-hour shifts, but they'll usually do, 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 on,
yeah,
3 off, or they do 10-hour shifts, 4 on, 4 off. But that stuff, it it's tough. It's tough. And so this is what you got to think about too, Paul. I think about a lot of aspects of the strength and conditioning game, whether it's college or high school. Is it healthy to always be on and like, going so hard? And sometimes it's not. And so I would advise some of these younger guys, get your supervisors or some sort of administrative certificate or degree so you can pivot and transition and still be involved, but maybe have a bigger say, a little more influence,
mhm,
and you've had your boots on the ground floor. That makes you a very valuable educator, coach, administrator, because you've experienced it. And I
yeah,
think, we need more coaches like that. In hindsight, my master's degree is health education. I thought I would be teaching at the college level. I tore my ACL. That changed my life. And I
mhm,
just went boom. Looking back, I would have gotten like an MBA, some sort, master's business administration, because that would have allowed me easier to transition into administration and still be involved in the athletics, umbrella.
mhm,
So important stuff out there. And then I guess at the end of the day, if you have a family, I say do what's best for your family.
yeah.
Do what's best for your family. So what else you got? Anything else before we shut it down?
No, that's a full day right there. That's
Full
awesome.
day.
I mean, that's a lot of great advice that you give as far as, just plan not just on the coaching side. It should be, again, what can you do in that realm? Like you said, whether it's administrator, athletic director, yeah, heck, even work, like you said, in the business office,
Yeah.
helping with budget and things like that. And um, that's a big deal, and that's something I didn't do a really good job of. And there's some things I can do, but at this point right now, I plan on staying 100 Central till, for another 10 years, and, watching my son finish up here and getting him through college. And, that's going to be 6 years right there.
Yeah, it goes
And,
fast. Goes fast.
and then we start looking maybe at houses down by you down there at the beach. Let's go.
Yeah, Paul Collodi will be surfing.
Oh,
Listen,
no chance.
you will put the surfboard on top of the Cadillac. How good would that look?
Come on. But you could drive. I'll just hold it.
Yeah. Oh man, good time. So we've got some guests coming up. Who was one of
Yep.
your guests? What's her name again?
Next one will be Michelle Hart Miller. She is a strength coach and an athletic trainer. She does both. She wears both hats. At Londonderry High School in Nashua, New Hampshire. She is the reigning Northeast Regional Strength Coach of the Year, and she's outstanding.
Nice.
She's going to wow some people about her day.
Yeah.
We can talk to her a little bit about that.
Cool.
And then we got a couple other guys that are going to be outstanding. Talking to some people, maybe Coach Schrock, like you said.
Mike Schrock will be on. We've
Yep.
got we'll probably have one of our first private sector guys will be Joe McAuliffe, who's in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And Joe he has his own facility, but I think he also goes into some of the schools. So
Yeah.
he's been around for a while. So he's going to bring a unique perspective to kind of blending, being in a school as well as private sector guys. Mike Schrock, and I can't remember who else. We had somebody else. On the map. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah, maybe Coach Pearson. He's got his Griffin Challenge
Yes,
that he
that's
works
right.
every year.
That is
Um,
going to be cool. He's where? Ohio or Iowa?
I want to say Ohio, but I could be wrong with that. I
Okay.
spoke to him the other day. He's in my mentorship group, and
Nice.
I asked him if he would come on. He said he'd love to and talk about what the Griffin Challenge is and what it's for.
Yes.
It's a great story. I'm not going to ruin any of it.
Right. Let's get him on the schedule. So for all of our friends watching and listening, thank you for supporting. A couple ways that you could support beyond watching is we want to increase membership for the New Jersey National High School Strength Coaches Association. So you go to nhssca.us. You could become a member. I think it's $100 a year. So that's, like $9 a month, which is nothing. The resources are great. Visit our sponsors. We have sponsorship page on the nhssca.us, and you could see equipment companies you could order from, whether it's flooring, equipment that you need. You can see the technology and software for attendance and tracking training, and then get involved in our Facebook group because the coaches are constantly sharing feedback and, as Arnold Schwarzenegger said, advices. Remember Pumping Iron?
That's right.
He says,
No, wait.
Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron, they're interviewing him during his last Mr. Olympia, and he's talking about Franco Columbu. He goes, on the day of the contest, Franco is like a child, and so he comes to me like a father for advices. And he goes,
I don't remember that.
Yeah. He goes, so it's not
I
that
remember
hard for me to give him the wrong advices. And so I always say advices to see if anybody picks up on that phrase.
I got to go back and watch that again.
So on this podcast, we only give the right advices, right?
That's right. That's the word of the day.
Advices. All right. So friends on YouTube, leave us a review also on Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
You open up the show, scroll down, and then you click leave a review, 5-star, and then you just write up 2 or 3 sentences and spread the word. Share it with other coaches. And that's it. I'd also like eventually to get a sport coach on board. And I think I'm going to reach out. The first guy I know who we're going to reach out to, but we want to get some sport coaches who are not full-blooded strength coaches. It'll be great to hear how they're making things happen.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Paul, hang tight as we shut it down.